Morning, welcome to Live Church Online. Lovely to see you all and really looking forward to our time together this morning. And Ben and Nancy, a warm welcome to you. We'll be hearing from Ben in a little while. Before we go over to Ben, there's just a that I want to just talk about, just a few things to let you know what's going on this morning. First of all, I was just going to bring something that I saw this morning, which was from Nicky Gamble. It was a post that he tweeted from Prince William, and it said, "The Christian teachings of faith, hope and love could not be more appropriate as we all try to navigate our way through these uncertain times." And as I was praying this morning, a word I felt God put on my heart was Jeremiah 31:3. "I have loved you with an everlasting love. I have drawn you with unfailing kindness." And I just want to thank God that, for his love, his kindness and his mercy. And as we come this morning, just that whole that he's drawing us, that he loves us so much. And just thank you so much, God. So this morning we will be having a time after the message. If there's anything that's on your heart that you feel that God's put on your heart that you'd like to share, we'll be having a time after we hear from Graham Wickenden. So yeah, please share, that would be lovely. Also to let you know that this is being recorded, so that the people that are presenting are being recorded, and anything when the children come back from their breakout rooms from Sunday school, they won't be recorded, so just to let you know. Also we will be having a time of worship after we hear from hello from Ben. So looking forward to this morning, looking forward to being with you all in God. And over to Ben. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's so good to be able to meet with you today. It's been a long process, but it's fantastic that we're now here. And this is the 7 days in. It's the end of my first week, and it's been I guess it's been quite a typical first week in a new job, lots of admin and dealing with technical stuff, which has been interesting. But it's been a great first week, and it's fantastic to be able to share this first Sunday with you.
And thank you from me as well. We just had such a warm welcome from you guys. It's been wonderful to get so many emails and Facebook messages and texts and so on. It's just making us feel really plugged in, even though we still can't be together at this time. We're just really excited to finally be here and be a part of Life Church and get stuck in and get involved, really. Yeah, great. So just wanted to let you know a little bit of what's going to be happening with me over the next few weeks. So there's a preaching series that Dave Grant put in 1 and 2 Thessalonians, and just want to let that run. It's a good preaching series. So going to let those guys continue with that. And then I'm going to start a new preaching series that will begin on the 28th. Love for the church. Okay, that's gone. Okay, I don't know if it was just me that heard that or whether you all did. So that's going to happen. But what I want to do is meet with all of you the best way that I can to start with. So I'm going to do what I call the listening tour, and that's going to be a tour around your Connect groups at some point. So Tom and Rachel are going to be in contact with you to let you know those dates. And that's just opportunity for me to ask you some questions, get to know you. You can ask me some questions. So we'll visit that way. But of course, I just want to give an open invitation to everyone. Of course, this is a challenging situation that we're in. I'd love to be able to meet with all of you personally and have those regular catch-ups on a Sunday morning that we're not going to be able to do in the same way. But let's figure out how we can do that. So you've got my email address. We can book in FaceTimes or Zooms, emails, phone conversations, just so I can get to know you and we can get to know one another. So do be in touch. And thank you so much, all of you, for being part of Life Church. You could be anywhere on a Sunday morning, and the fact that you've chosen to meet together and be together and honour God and worship God together in this way is absolutely fantastic. And I'm just really looking forward to getting stuck in and being part of you. So as Lou said, we're going to go into a time of worship now. So let's lift our voices to God. Let's worship him. Let's thank him for everything that he's done in our lives and give him the glory this morning. Thanks, Life Church.
The moon and stars, they wear So, good morning, everyone. This is a time in our service where we just want to try and bring a bit of variety to our online services by focusing on our ministry in the church, as we did with J5 a couple of weeks ago, or in individuals. So at this time, we're obviously thinking about our key workers and how hard they're working, and the sacrifices they're making. I just wanted to focus on somebody in the church who is a key worker, in the shape of our very own Colin Levy. So Colin, are you there? Right, well, welcome, Colin. Thank you for spending this time with us to tell us a little bit about your job and the sort of things that you're going through. So what is your job? What do you do on a sort of day-to-day, what your day-to-day activities at hospital?
My job title is I'm theatre porter in main theatres. My role is quite varied. We'll go and get the patient from a ward, take into the anaesthetic room. Sometimes we sit and basically disappear and move out of the way. Other times we're called in just to help assist with the patient, to move on to the theatre, onto the table.
So how has COVID-19 affected your sort of day-to-day activities? I mean, obviously we're beginning to come down the other side at the moment, but how has it affected it over the last couple of months?
It's a bit of a change, you could say. The good thing with our hospital is that we have they class it as major incident plans, and they do practice major incidents. They emptied the whole of one floor, which is where we are, ready for COVID, and they moved patients around the hospital, discharged as many as possible if they were safe enough, and he got himself so. We then went down from our main theatres to day surgery. And as we quite jokingly said, we invaded because we're bigger. So we basically, as a family, we must say, moved downstairs. And we carry on exactly the same as we were upstairs to downstairs. And nothing's changed for us from that part.
So have you been worried or fearful about any of that at all?
Initially, all of us were, because it hadn't hit England at that point. So there was a lot of fear. A lot of worries, and we have a large Filipino workforce with us in the theatres. So of course they were a bit worried, like anything. There was a lot of sleepless nights. A lot of the band 7s, sisters, doctors weren't worried about it because no one knew what's happening. It's never been seen before, and it's never arrived into England. The theatre I work with, the team are very good. We sit as a family. There's no hierarchy, and it's all basically look after each other. So if you're feeling a bit low, or someone's feeling a bit low one day, they get bolstered up and say, "What's the matter? I wasn't sleeping very well. Oh, come on, have a cup of tea. Come on, what's going on? Have a little chat. You ready? Yeah, off we go then." Or they could, let's say, why don't you go home a little bit earlier today? It was literally you're looking after yourself for the well-being. There's the majority of my staff, the staff I work with, are Christians, and each one of them was saying, "Oh, we're praying. We're praying about this, praying that sort of thing. Praying for it to be done, pray for it to protect ourselves, pray for other people." So there's a lot of prayer going on. It might have been open prayer, but they were praying. You know what I'm trying to say? Because someone say, I prayed last night. Right, so I was feeling a bit down, and I know so I was a bit down, so I prayed about it. And
have you been supported well by the church family, or is there anything more we could or should have been doing and can do?
So we at the moment we've now got their chaplains coming down to talk to us. The trust itself has asked. They were going to see the patients, and now they've asked the chaplains to come speak to us. And they can have a chat and they see us, they walk in and make sure you're okay. It's as we're coming out of this now and back into normality, is when obviously people will their mental health might start worrying, or they've been running too much on a high as such, and concentrating so much on the patient and not neglecting themselves. And there's still doctors and nurses still not sleeping properly.
Really? Wow.
Because of it. Because they're literally running on adrenaline, basically.
Yeah.
That's the main ones I think to pray about. Is obviously the care homes and obviously the hospital,
Yeah.
and obviously the staff. I think.
Yeah. Sure.
The main one.
So should we pray now? Is that?
Yeah, we can do. Yeah.
Yeah. So Father God, we thank you for Colin. Thank you for all these people, Lord, that are our frontline workers, quite self-sacrificing in their jobs and what they do. Lord, I just pray for your strength upon him and his family. I pray for your protection upon them, Lord, that you'll be really with him. I pray that he would be able to talk to his colleagues and support them as well, and preach your word even, Lord, as people begin to look and question, Father, that you would give him the words to say, that you give him wisdom and strength in all that he does. In your name, amen.
Good morning. Before I start on the penultimate sermon from 1 Thessalonians, where we look at the second part of chapter 4 and the first part of chapter 5, I'd like to welcome Nancy to our church. I trust she's made to feel very welcome here. I believe she's got a husband called Ben, I think. Anyway, I'm sure we'll see him a bit too, and when we do, that we can feel welcome as well. Now, I don't know who thought it was a good idea to have me to be the first person that Ben, in his role as our new pastor, witnessed preaching. I can only guess it was to make the rest of the preaching team look good. Whatever the reason, I trust that you are well and that you're finding this preaching series useful. However, if you have any pastoral matters or practical needs, then please let someone from the leadership team or a friend within the church know, so that we as a church can support you. We are now approaching the end of 1 Thessalonians, and as a letter it was intended to be read all the way through. As such, I hope you've had opportunity to read it, as this should help you to see how the letter is formed and therefore where each of these sermons fits. If you've not done so, I'd encourage you to read it before the next sermon. We should also be mindful that although this letter was written for a church in one city, it would have been shared around the other churches in nearby cities. Therefore, when Paul was writing, he was aware that this letter would have been heard by more than just those in that one church. Even if he wasn't aware that we would be reading it, therefore we aren't eavesdropping on a private letter. Now, for those who haven't read ahead, we come to the point where Paul talks about the end times. Having a passage on the end times could allow me to launch off in many different directions, including any pet theories I may have. And it's an area beset with pitfalls and multiple theories, some of which can come across as a little crazy, especially at the moment. However, the Bible is clear, as is this passage, that whilst we should know that the end times are coming, and they will be hard to live through, it isn't something we should spend a lot of time speculating on. Now let's turn to 1 Thessalonians 4, and we'll start reading from the second part of verse 11. You should mind your own business and work with your hands, just as we told you, so that your daily life will win the respect of outsiders, and so that you will not be dependent on anyone. Brothers and sisters, we do not want you to be uninformed about those who fall asleep, so that you do not grieve like the rest of mankind, who have no hope. For we believe that Jesus died and rose again, and so we believe that God will bring with Jesus those who fall asleep in him. According to the Lord's word, we tell you that we who are still alive, who are left until the coming of the Lord, will certainly not precede those who have fallen asleep. For the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a loud command, with the voice of the archangel and with the trumpet call of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. After that, we who are still alive and are left will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And so we will be with the Lord forever. Therefore, encourage one another with these words. Now, brothers and sisters, about times and dates we need not write to you, for you know very well that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. Whilst people are saying peace and safety, destruction will come on them suddenly, as labour pains on a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. But you, brothers and sisters, are not in darkness, so that this day should surprise you like a thief. You are children of the light and children of the day. We do not belong to the night or to the darkness. So then, let us not be like others who are asleep, but let's be awake and sober. For those who sleep, sleep at night, and those who get drunk at night. But since we belong to the day, let us be sober. putting on faith and love as a breastplate, and the hope of salvation as a helmet. For God did not appoint us to suffer wrath, but to receive salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ. He died for us, so that whether awake or asleep, we may live together with him. Therefore, encourage one another and build each other up, just as in fact you are doing. Now we ask you, brothers and sisters, to acknowledge those who work hard among you, who care for you in the Lord and who admonish you. Hold them in the highest regard in love because of their work. Live in peace with each other. There are some clear things which Paul wanted us to understand from this. So what are these, and what's Paul trying to say to us? Well, firstly, he gives us some encouragement for those of us who know people who have fallen asleep and are believers. Paul often talks about people who are asleep, and I don't think he was thinking of those who fell asleep during his sermons. You can read about one such occurrence in Acts 20, starting at verse 7. If you don't know the story, it's well worth reading. For those of you who do know the story, you can be assured that I'm not going to be preaching until midnight, and if I did, I should very much expect quite a few of you to fall asleep. However, just to be on the safe side, can you make sure you're not sat so that you could fall out of an open window? Thanks. Rather, Paul is talking about those who've died. Now, with a lot of hindsight, we can be more confident that God's plan was for those who died as well as those who are still alive when Jesus returned, as otherwise the early disciples would not have been rescued by the death of Jesus. This wasn't always the view among the early Christians, with many expecting Jesus to return very soon, and so we're very worried that those who died may not be saved. This is why Paul talks about it in his letter, to provide them, and us, this reassurance. It's useful to know that we can have confidence that when we, or others who we love who are Christians, die, that we should rise with Jesus upon his return. Reminding ourselves of this truth reassures us in our faith, as well as comforting those who have lost a believing friend or relative. It should also spur us on to tell others. The second part of the passage talks about the times and dates of Jesus' return. Now, I know Paul says that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night, but I can announce to you here and now that I can be confident about the date of the coming of the Lord. It is, drum roll please, at least 1900 years after Paul wrote this letter. Now, in all seriousness, this can sometimes cause us to start to think that Jesus isn't going to come back anytime soon, as he's not come back yet. Rather, our thinking should be more along the lines of, given that so much time has passed, and we're therefore that much closer to the return of the Lord than the first disciples were. As such, we should live more like those who are expecting him to return very soon, which paradoxically the early Christians were much better at doing than we generally are. Many of you are probably thinking, yes, Graham, we get that. However, how does that impact on what we should be doing now? Well, primarily it should remind us that we are tomorrow people. What I mean by this is that whilst it's important that we remember what Jesus has done, we should also remember that he's coming again to complete the work he has started in us. As an example, we are called holy by God, even though we are aware we fail to fall short of this standard. Our holiness will only be complete upon Jesus' return, even though we're called holy now. Now, we should not get too disheartened when we fail to meet our own standards for holiness, because we've been made complete by God, as long as the general trend is of improvement when we look back from where we've come from. With that in mind, there are 7 things we should be doing to be ready for the return of the Lord. Now, for those of you sitting there, hopefully heeding my advice about open windows and thinking, oh no, he's starting on 7 points, this is going to go on much closer to midnight than I feared, and much, much longer than we are accustomed from Graham. Well, don't worry, each point is fairly brief. Firstly, we should be sure in our own faith, by seeking the Lord whilst he still can be found, and then continuing in our journey of faith. As great as repenting and believing is, as well as getting baptised as an outward sign of this, this is only the first step in what we should be doing to prepare. Guy Miller highlighted in the video that we watched in the first of our Lockdown Connect groups, planting a seed is just the first step. there is a long time and many steps before a plant fruits. Paul talks about us putting on faith and love as a breastplate and the hope of salvation as a helmet. That's a command to keep doing something and not something that we should just do once. That, of course, does mean that if any of you listening to this and haven't responded to God's invitation to join his family and demonstrate this adoption from your old way of life by being baptised, then I would encourage you to do so. For Paul says in chapter 5, verses 9 and 10, that we're not destined to suffer wrath, but we can receive salvation through Jesus' death, and we may live together. And it may well be that we continue being an online church, or at least in part, after lockdown is over. This could mean that we end up with people who are part of the church who aren't particularly local to us, and so we may need to give consideration to how we can support these people in the journey of faith, including baptisms. Given Paul was able to support churches without the aid of Zoom and all the technology at our disposal, then I can't see why this shouldn't be possible now. The second thing we should be doing is serving. Now, I conveniently added a few verses at the start and end of the passage, which we read, both talking about working. I wanted to highlight that in these bookend verses, Paul is talking about all those who work, regardless of what the work is for, as both those who do overtly spiritual work, such as those who preach or lead worship, and those who work at more worldly jobs, like designing roads. Therefore, in whatever we do, we should demonstrate our love for God by working as if it is God that we are working for. In addition to paid work and prestigious work within the church, there is clearly a need for people to do tasks which allow the church to do all the work that it needs to do to carry on reaching out to those around us, as well as building up those who are within the church. More on that later. Sometimes this work is within a formal setting, with rotas and the like, such as me preaching to you, or those producing our services via Zoom. Given that often the same few undertake a lot of roles, one way that we can support each other is to be on a formal rota. However, the same few doing a lot can result in burnout, whilst with a little help from others, their load would be much lighter. There's a good example of everyone playing their part in the Bible, which Diana reminded us of a few weeks ago. The story comes from the second half of Exodus 17, where all the time that Moses had his arms up, the Israelites were winning the battle, and when his arms dropped, they were losing. Now in the middle of that battle, those fighting would be looking to Joshua. However, some would argue the real work was being done behind the scenes by those supporting Moses' arms. Now whilst I would expect us all to support Ben in the obvious work which happens in the church, there are others who also need our support. Often what they do is less well known, yet is just as important. This may include those who support other individuals, such as their family, and those who are prayer warriors. Anyone in either of these groups would benefit from additional support from those in the wider church. And anyway, additional prayer is always of benefit to the church. I'm not going to list everyone, because I'm sure I'll miss somebody. However, there is much which needs to happen to allow our church to function well, and therefore reach others. This is often done by people who could do with some extra help, like Moses did with his arms. There's still much which can be done even during this time of lockdown, including worship, splash, producing, directors, finance team, Junction 5, food bank, and as well as being prepared to do other tasks which we need to do upon our return to meeting together. Of course, prayer is always fundamental to a church's ongoing mission as well, so the more of that we can do, the better. Thirdly, we should be holy, as God doesn't just offer us forgiveness now and that we'll be holy when we live with him. Rather, we're called to be holy, even though we are not yet fully holy until Jesus returns, as I highlighted earlier. Paul highlights this in chapter 4, verses 3 and 4, as David brought to us last week by asking, what change should we make to work towards our holiness? The next thing we need to do is to ensure that we spend time with our spiritual family. In chapter 2, verse 7, Paul describes himself as a mother to the believers, in the way that he cares for them, and at many other times we're described as brothers and sisters in Christ. I'm sure that during this time of lockdown, there are many of us who understand that families can be tough to be around, and so it shouldn't surprise you to know that it's going to be the same within our adopted family too. As Paul says in chapter 5 verse 11, therefore encourage one another and build each other up, just as in fact you are doing. Sometimes this can be as simple as a word of encouragement. Other times it can be coming alongside those who are going through tough times and just listening to them and being there for them. During this time of lockdown, this can be harder, without the ability to hug them or go round to their house to help them, or the many other things which we'd normally do in that situation. However, there could be some benefits in that some people may be more available than they otherwise would have been. The fifth thing that we need to do is to give others the invitation of God to join his family. This is often called evangelism. Now, like all gifts, the task of being an evangelist is something that we should all try and do, and not just those who have the gift. Partly, this is so that those who do have the gift find out their gifting. For we've all been given the free reward of restoration in relation to God, with fairly little to do in return, except to tell others, even though this reward is of great value. However, as was highlighted in the first sermon, this is more than just talking. In chapter 1 verse 5 it says, because our gospel came to you, not simply with words, but also with power and the Holy Spirit and a deep conviction. Therefore, we should be listening to God and praying for openings to talk about him, and that God will move in power. The penultimate thing we should be doing is the partner of inviting others to join God's family. That is, to carry out works of social action, or to put it another way, providing practical love to people around us. Again, this shouldn't just be left to those who do things like food bank and Junction 5 money advice, as this work is important, and it often doesn't get the thanks and support from the rest of the church that it deserves. It's something that we should it isn't something that we should just leave to the few. Much in the same way that we shouldn't leave spreading the gospel to those who preach or worship to those who lead worship. For example, if we just left giving to those who had the gift of giving, yes, it is a spiritual gift, see Romans 12 verses 8, then the churches would run out of money very quickly. Social action can be seen in the early church as they shared everything that they had and no one was in need. This can be seen in the early chapters of Acts. The final thing that we should do is to have endurance, as is highlighted in the second letter of Thessalonians chapter 2 verses 15. So then, brothers and sisters, stand firm and hold fast to the teachings that we passed on to you, whether by word of mouth or by letter. This final point has a different weight depending on who talks to you about it. To illustrate this, we need to go back through the mists of time, to a time when I was much younger. Actually, so far back it's to a point where I had no grey hair. I was attending a day release college course, and after one of my lessons, my maths lecturer approached me and shared with me how he'd identified that I was a Christian. He then went on to share with me how he grew up in Soviet Russia whilst being a Christian, and reminded me of how precious our faith is, and encouraged me to keep on in my faith. This has stuck with me much more than the many other times which I've been told this, for he was imprisoned for his faith before being able to come to the West. Therefore, I thought, if he can maintain his faith through what he's been through, then given that I'm unlikely to go through anything like that, then I'm going to work at sticking at my faith. We will all struggle with this in different ways and at different times, and it's another reason we should keep meeting together, even if it's hard to do. By meeting together, it will help us to work through these times. One additional point on this: endurance is different to being sure of your faith, in that being sure of your faith can be a factor which helps us with our endurance. However, just being a Christian for a long time doesn't mean that you're more or less sure of your faith. In fact, it can lead you to have different doubts. As an example, some people may think, I've been wasting my time on all these years, or because I've not had a significant conversion story, I'm of less use to God as a witness. I once heard a tale of someone who was sharing their concern about a lack of major conversion story with someone else who had been converted in a dramatic way. The second person said that they were jealous of the biblical knowledge that the first person had, having grown up in the church, to the extent that they couldn't remember stories and verses, and so couldn't share them in the same way. Again, this highlights why we need to work together with our giftings to build the church, as both these people could have excluded themselves from sharing with others for different reasons. However, pair them up and they can be much more effective than the sum of their parts. Now, I know this has been a bit of a whistle-stop tour and what we should do in response to the coming of Christ. However, that does mean that there are few who can sit back and say, there's nothing we need to be doing in response to this. What is it that you need to be doing more of to carry on in your journey of faith, or are you in a place where you need to start on your journey? Either way, I suggest that you spend time over the course of the rest of this meeting or during this week to consider your response. To help you, here are the 7 things which you might need to do. Be sure of your faith, and this may include starting your journey of faith. Serve. This may include looking at how you work or serving within the church. Be holy, even though we are aware that this is always a work in progress until Jesus returns. Be with our spiritual family and hold each other up. Tell others about God's invitation, even if we're not evangelists. Carry out acts of love to those around us in need through social action. Endurance by standing firm in our faith. While you consider this, let me pray, and then we'll continue with the rest of our meeting. Dear Lord, thank you that you acted to save us and bring us back into relationship with you by making us holy. I pray that if anyone hears this sermon who isn't a Christian, that they would respond to your act of love and invitation to become part of your family, and that we'd all have a chance to share this message with someone this week. May we look to help others, either within or outside the church, and work to build each other up as we continue to meet together. And that you help us to stand firm in our faith until you return, be that quick or slow, to your praise and glory. Amen.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name.
Thank you for those beautiful pictures, and thank you for that time worship as well. Thank you. We're now going into the announcements. So on Wednesday we have Lockdown Connect, and so yes, Wednesday we have Lockdown Connect. So join at 8 p.m. If you need to find out any information as to groups, give Tom and Rachel a message and you can find that in Church Suite, so you can let them know. Yeah, it'd be so great to see everybody. We watch a short video and then have time together, praying, supporting one another, and some questions. So a really, really lovely time together. So look forward to seeing you all Wednesday. Saturday the 30th, we have our quiz night. And yeah, looking forward to that. It's at 7:30, and 6 devices per team. Enter with your team name and the devices that will be on there, and great fun together. If you haven't got a team, don't worry, just enter on the night, so you can start signing up as from now. And yeah, really look forward to a time all together, having good fun. And yeah, so that's Saturday the 30th. So we look forward to those 2 things this week. And so now is the end of our formal time together. Thank you everyone for all your contributing. Thank you for everyone that shared. Thank you so much. And we are now in a few moments going to go into breakout rooms together, so have time together, chat together, and yeah, just be together. So looking forward to spending time with you now. God bless everyone, lots of love everyone. And yeah, if you need to talk to anyone or there's anything you need to chat to, please get in touch. Lots of love. Okay, thank you. Bye.